You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves win the back-to-back as Ant breaks multiple team records tonight. Final score in New Orleans, 104-97. What's going on? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves postcast right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow at JRBorman13. Lots to get into from tonight's game, Jack, including Ant's record-breaking night, plus the defense showing up and showing out in the second half. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so Wolves on the back end of a back-to-back, facing Zion for the first time this year. He hasn't played in, 27 games. Wolves start out red hot. Julius drops his first 3 shots. Ant starts out red hot as well, right where he left off the last 2 games. We go into halftime tied, though. And then third quarter, T-Wolves defense was just lights out. Rudy Gobert was fantastic again. Mike Conley looking great in this new role coming off the bench. And Ant's 32 points is enough for the 104-97 win. I want to start like we did last night, just kind of big picture first. They snapped that 3-game losing streak last night, coming back from 19 down versus LA. Now on the back-to-back, they win both, and they do it with a new starting 5. So big picture, this team has been very hot and cold, as we talked about last night as well. They seem to be heating back up just a little bit. How are we feeling right now? What are the vibes, I guess, after tonight?
I'm feeling great now that I fixed my camera. I did not realize what that view was. That was my fault for the YouTube audience. But no, I mean the vibes are definitely better. I think unquestionably. I just think that they're getting to some lineups that are playing a little bit better together, and I think Anthony Edwards certainly has a lot to do with the vibes of the team being better. Just because I think he's playing with more passion and more fire than we've seen from him for the most part of the season tonight. And he showed that again tonight too when he started getting going. Started out 4 of 4 from 3, which was certainly huge for him. And just to kind of continue that, really strong performance from last night. And so I think that him continuing to play with that passion and that fire and really get aggressive early in the game so he can get his teammates going. That's something that we've talked about throughout the season. It is just the need for Ant to be more of a scorer than a facilitator in that opening group. And I think slotting in Dante DiVincenzo for Anthony Edwards just provides a little bit more spacing, or excuse me, Dante and for Mike Conley provides a little bit more spacing and just more of a scoring threat next to Anthony Edwards that I think keeps the defense a little bit more honest, because Dante has been a great outlet for Ant. Those two have had a really good synergy for the most part, which has been great to see. And Ant, again, 32 points tonight, 9 boards, 7 threes, franchise record for most threes in a 3-game span with 23, broke the 3-game scoring record in franchise history with I believe 132. The previous record was 116 by Karl Anthony Towns last season. So it's great to see that. First time the series had 3 consecutive 30-point games. First time he's done it since games 3 and 4 versus Phoenix and game 1 against Denver in the playoffs last season. Had 35 plus points in all of those games, actually. So it was really good to see him get going. But this is just a game. I mean, you look at some of the metrics from this game, and you're just like, how the heck did New Orleans lose this game? I mean, they score 28 points off 17 Timberwolves turnovers. They score 31 fast break points. They have 13 offensive rebounds for 14 second chance points. They had 24 free throw attempts to the Wolves 19. And the Timberwolves only shot 68% from the free throw. I mean, you're looking around at this box score. You're like, how on earth did the Pelicans win this game? But it's just because they couldn't make shots, simply put. I mean, it's a make or miss league on some nights. And tonight was certainly one of them. McCollum, 1 of 14. Messi, 1 of 7. Robinson Earl, 2 of 6. Hawkins, 1 of 4. Boston, 1 of 6. I mean, it's just tough to win when you got that many guys having an off night. And then when you only shoot 63% from the free throw line, it's pretty tough. And then last thing for me off the top here, it's just awesome to see Zion back. He is probably my favorite player to get to see up close and personal at an NBA game, just because I think he is the most unique athlete I have ever seen in person. I think if there's one player in today's NBA that I would recommend, anyone watching this, go take your kids or go see it for yourself and get good tickets. If, obviously if you have the financial means to go and sit up close. I mean, he is one guy, obviously tough because he's out a lot, but when he plays, he is just an athletic marvel. The way that he absorbs contact, his second jumps on offensive rebounds after he gets those offensive rebounds is incredible on second chances. And I mean, the 360 windmill dunk on Ant. And
Sports Center top 10 coming your way tonight for sure.
To the league that, hey, my hamstring is just fine and we're going to have some fun here now that I'm back and healthy, and got to stop without a shoe on. Fourth quarter, Gobert, which is crazy. But again, the Pelicans were +8 in his 28 minutes. So what is that? The 20 minutes that he did not play, Pelicans lost those minutes by 15, and that was highlighted by that just disastrous third quarter run that the Pelicans allowed that we'll get into in a little bit. But for Zion, 22 points on 15 shots, 6 boards, 4 stocks. Just showed you exactly why he's such a special player when he is able to lace him up, because I mean, just the touch that he has and the way that he absorbs contact and keeps his, balance in the air, and then has, just the ability to finish at all these angles, and just the way that he always gets back to that left hand. And there's just not a whole lot you can do to stop him. And then if you sell out to try to stop his left hand, the way that he can just spin back and just jump out of the gym and dunk over people with both hands it
reminds me of almost like an Aaron Donald, where it's like somebody this big and this strong and this dense should not be able to move that effortlessly, should not be able to be that agile and that quick and have that kind of explosion, but he does. It's got to be so maddening, so frustrating for Pelicans fans, because you see it. You see the superstardom. You see the potential. You see the ceiling, and you just need the guy to stay healthy for a full season or two just to have it all come together. You mentioned Ant broke the record for most three-pointers in 3 games, the team record for most points in 3 games, 32 more points tonight, as you mentioned. What has kind of unlocked him as of late, and what are you most impressed by, I guess, when it comes to him and just the things he's doing again now on the court the last week or so?
Yeah, I think certainly it's just the way that he's been able to get into the paint. And we talked about it last night, of just the way that Ant was able to kind of marry his scoring in the paint with his 3-point shot, and the fact that I think he took 13 shots.
13 and 13, you said. Yeah.
13 and 13, yeah. And so tonight, only
had 4 free throws, by the way, last night. Tonight, I think he had 6 or 7, but
6 free throws.
Yeah.
Yep, 6 free throws tonight. Only 5 looks in the paint, but was more willing to take some mid-range shots, and I didn't think most of them were bad shots necessarily. I think in that game against. Was it last night? Yeah, early in the game last night, he was more willing to kind of get to that mid-range pull-up, which was something that he did a lot last season, in the early part of last season, when his scoring really started to take a jump, just because it was a layer of his game that he hadn't really added much. So he was more willing to do that, and I think it forced the defense to kind of creep out on him a little bit, because he made a couple of those early in the game, which was nice to see. And then really has just gotten it going with the 3-point shot. And I think obviously for Ant, when he can knock down 23 3-pointers in a 3-game span and continue to shoot, at a 40+% level for someone with his ability to drive to the basket and finish inside with just crazy explosiveness, that's certainly going to make things really complicated for defenses in terms of what you want to take away. Do you want to play far out on him and try to take away his 3-point shot? Or do you want to, kind of force him to continue to shoot those threes? It's kind of a tough ask for defenses. And I think the number one thing that I think kind of multiplies the difficulty of that for defenders is, can you put him in lineups where there's ample spacing? And I think we've seen that tonight and last night, especially getting him more minutes with DiVincenzo. I think we're seeing Ant and Randall play a little bit less together. And then also trying to get Ant a little bit more run with guys like Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels, who he's played a ton of minutes with, is super close with, and feels really good playing off of those guys. I think has been really important. And then it's also helpful for Randall too. I think getting to play Randall with guys like Nikhil and Dante and Naz, all guys that like to get up tempo and play with pace and get out on the break, I think has been really helpful for Julius. And so I think Chris Finch deserves a lot of credit for the way that he's tried to kind of separate those two a little bit. and try to put them in lineups that really kind of accentuate their strengths and make it easy for them to succeed. So the more that Ant has that spaced out floor, the tougher it is for defenses to kind of make a decision. Do I want to take away the 3? Do I want to take away the 2? Because it's easier for Ant to get to the rim in more spaced out lineups. So there's not as much jumbled spacing. It's a little bit harder for teams to load up on him. So instead of always having to pull up for that mid-range 2, and when he's playing below the arc, he does have the ability to get all the way to the rim with less bodies in the paint. So I think, again, it's just trying to get guys that can space the floor and shoot threes and spread the defense out a little bit, makes it easy for him. Because then if the defense is able to shut down his ability to score from 3 and his ability to put it on the deck and get in the paint and score, he's done a good job of making some kick out passes, especially last night, that result in, if not really good shot attempts for the guys passing it to, than the guy that for a hockey assist in the corner or something like that. Yeah. So it's all about spacing for Ant, and hopefully he continues to shoot the 3 at the rate he's been doing it the last really 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. Well said. Good breakdown there. Plenty more deep dive from this one, including the Wolves' A+ defense in the third quarter and Rudy Gobert's impact during that run. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel is giving you a chance at a huge return, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. Why I love FanDuel, because when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in on some NBA future action while you're there. Anthony Edwards MVP odds sitting at 18-1. It's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Jack. So I want to ask you about the third quarter run, really when the Wolves took the lead and took it for good. But first, just real quick, just some Q&A in the comments, in the live chat. Okay, Mason says, hey, a lot of NBA teams run 10 or 11 deep. And I'm with you, Mason. I would love to see my guy Terrence Shannon Jr. Minot's been exciting. But is this something where it's like the Wolves have actually had some of the best injury luck this year across the NBA, and that's one of the reasons why we're not seeing some of these young cats quite yet?
Yeah, that's certainly contributed to it, no question. We'll get into it a little bit later on Thursday night. We're actually going to see a matchup of the two teams on the opposite end of the injury luck spectrum, in terms of, if you take the wins above replacement kind of sum the wins above replacement for all the games that the Timberwolves have lost. They've lost the least, wins above replacement value, and the Magic have lost the most, actually. So the Timberwolves, certainly it's, they've had guys miss games, but they've had miss games like Garza and Dillingham and Ingles, who have contributed the most to the, missed games metric for the Timberwolves. Those guys aren't really contributors to the team. So in terms of the total wins above replacement they're not losing very much. Whereas,
no starters, not even guys coming off the bench really at all, except Dilly a little bit. But
correct. We saw Mike miss a couple games with that calf injury. I think he was ruled out for a calf injury or foot injury. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I think that's certainly contributing to it. And the reality of this team is, like, this team's probably going to be in the playoffs. And so Chris Finch certainly wants to get his core guys as much minutes as he can early in the season, or as much time together as he can earlier in the season. Again, I certainly would like to see more time for Rob Dillingham, no question about it. And Josh Minot, especially on nights where Jaden McDaniels doesn't necessarily have it. But, I think for guys like Leonard Miller and TJ Shannon, it's just the reality of being a young guy on a pretty deep team that has some pretty high aspirations in terms of going deep in the postseason. So I think we may see those guys play at different points if there is an injury, especially on the wing. But, we'll see. And, worst case, I think, we've started to see teams like, the Bucks and the Suns, especially as they continue to be pretty expensive teams, need to rely on guys that, do occupy those, super small contracts at the back end of the rotation. So that might be something that, unfortunately, we may have to wait and see until next season.
Yeah, a good problem to have. One more. Let's go to Nick. Jaden, unfortunately, the glaring issue on this team right now, it's been crazy to close games with him all season. Listen, last night he hit that huge clutch 3 with 2 minutes left. Tonight, 5 points, 2 of 9. It always seems to be hot and cold with Jaden, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And I think it kind of waxes and wanes with confidence too. No question about it. And I think part of it too for Jaden is that, especially in a game like tonight, I think he was in there especially because his defense was really valuable. And for Jaden, based on how they were matching up, he was playing off of Herb Jones in the corner. And Herb Jones, the guy, went 2 of 5 from 3 tonight, but is not necessarily known as a 3-point shooter. Mm-hmm. And so with Julius Randle guarding Zion Williamson, that actually allowed Jaden to be off the ball and not be guarding a guy who had the ball in his hands, because Dante DiVincenzo took CJ McCollum. Anthony Edwards took, I think, DeJounte Murray. Yeah. Yep. And then Gobert obviously was on Misi. So that allowed Jaden McDaniels to actually be the low man in the Timberwolves drop coverage. So he was actually able to be a secondary rim protector, which he's tremendous at. He might honestly be a better backside rim protector than he is an on-ball defender. And that's really saying something, because he's one of the truly elite on-ball defenders in the NBA. So I think he was certainly in there for defense. And I think Chris Finch obviously has a pretty long leash for Jaden McDaniels, just because, he's not one of those guys where if his offense isn't really there, he's not adding any value to the Timberwolves. And so even though I know a lot of the lineup data is showing that the Timberwolves have been a better team with Jaden McDaniels off the floor than on the floor, I think that's just context for why Chris Finch probably is struggling to trust this team maybe when Jaden McDaniels is not out there, especially against a team with as much offensive talent as the Pelicans have between, obviously Zion, but DeJounte Murray and CJ McCollum. So being able to have Jaden out there and being able to, switch in certain situations, obviously, as well, is a big factor for him. And I think, again, all these other guys just trust Jaden. I know fans have been upset with him, especially, based on the contract that he signed, for sure. But guess what? None of his teammates really care about the contract that Jaden McDaniels has signed. So I think that frustration is probably felt more from fans than from his teammates. So again, I think, I think the biggest argument there for Jaden is like, hey, maybe would it make more sense for us to put Josh Minott, play Josh Minott more minutes when Jaden maybe doesn't have it offensively? But I just don't know that Chris Finch is going to trust Josh Minott to close games on the defensive end of the floor over Jaden McDaniels. And, again, depending on the matchup tonight, Jaden was functioning more as a backside rim protector. That's not really a role that you're going to have Nickeil Alexander-Walker in. Mm-hmm. So if anything, maybe it would have been Naz Reid closing over Jaden tonight, but Naz didn't necessarily have the greatest Naz game. I know he played much better in the second half, but I think Chris Finch just wanted as much defense in there, considering that they had a pretty darn good defensive night, holding the Pelicans to 97 points, 37% shooting, less than 30% from 3. So I think it was mostly defense than anything else.
Yeah, and speaking of defense, again, we talked about it last night. Last year, this team did not lose 3 in a row all season long. This year, been super streaky, hot and cold. A big part of that last year was their defense. You mentioned it was so good night in and night out. Just the overall floor of this team last year was just so much higher. In fact, when they won, 5 of 6 just a few weeks ago, they didn't allow more than 95 points in any of those games as well. So talk to me about the defense that you saw, specifically in the third quarter tonight, how they're doing just big picture overall, and Rudy Gobert's kind of part or catalyst, I guess, in that equation, because, he was coming off that 18 rebound performance last night as well.
Yeah, the numbers actually ended up being better in the second quarter by the time the third quarter ended.
Wow.
But Timberwolves, going a 19-2 run to go from, I think, down 8 to up 9, something like that.
Yep. When Zion came off.
Which was huge to see. And a lot of that coincided with when Zion was out of the game in the third quarter. The Timberwolves played 6 minutes and 34 seconds without Zion on the floor. They were plus 15 in those minutes. So that obviously had a ton to do with it. But again, Timberwolves in the third quarter did 2 things really, really well. I know, for our everydayers here, people who have popped in on our shows before, 2 things that I really like to look at for modern defense in the NBA. Can you keep teams away from the rim? So can you force teams to take their shots maybe a little further away from the rim in that 4 to 14 feet range? That's called, short mid range, not quite in the restricted area below the free throw line? And can you also prevent teams from taking corner threes and instead taking above the break threes? Because, teams generally shoot much higher on corner threes and much lower on above the break threes. And teams obviously shoot much worse in that short mid-range, the floater area, than at the rim. And that's where Rudy Gobert is really, really good. He does a great job of keeping guys away from the rim. And the great thing about Rudy Gobert is one of the best rim protectors this league has ever seen, is that he doesn't need a ton of backside help. And this game specifically was certainly a matchup where he's not going to need a whole lot of backside help, because Zion isn't really a shooter. Herb Jones isn't really a shooter. And Yves Missy isn't really, a guy that's going to impact things outside of the restricted area as an offensive player. And does that sound familiar? That sounded a little bit like what the Timberwolves have been dealing with offensively. But because of that, Rudy was just able to park down low, and he was able to keep New Orleans out of the paint for the most part, which was great. Again, New Orleans' third worst field goal percentage this season in that short mid-range area, about 37.5%. And for context, league average is just under 44%. So, and tonight they shot 7 of 22, 31.8%. So that's an excellent number for the Timberwolves. They did a great job of kind of swarming ball handlers once they got into the paint, which was great. And they almost forced as many short mid-range attempts, 22, as they did, shots at the rim, 27. So that's obviously a good share as well. And then above the break, the Pelicans came into this game as the 10th worst above the break 3-point shooting team, 33.6%. And tonight they shot 5 of 26, 19.2%, which is a great number. And it was great that they were able to force most of those 3-point shots to come from above the break, because the Pelicans did shoot 7 of 15 on corner threes. And so again, the more you can force them to shoot tougher shots, the better you're going to be defensively. And that's where Rudy Gobert is awesome. And holding New Orleans, I think, to 40 points in the paint tonight was a great testament to Rudy Gobert and the work that he did. New Orleans obviously did an excellent job of crashing the glass and 9 offensive rebounds at halftime. Yeah. And so the fact that they only had 4 in the second half with how many missed shots they were throwing up was tremendous. Rudy only had 7 points, but he had 14 rebounds, 4 assists, a great number for him getting active in the dribble handoff game and that, screen and roll game too, and 6 blocks. Season high 6 blocks for Rudy. So I don't even think he'd had 5 in a game yet this season. So it was awesome to see Rudy get involved. Obviously forced so many more difficult shots than just the 6 blocks and really made it difficult for New Orleans to crash the glass in the second half. And New Orleans only shot 55.6% at the rim. And that's a really, really strong number. Most teams are up just north of 60%. So really, really great game for Rudy Gobert. And it was fun to see him kind of control things. And it's what he does super, super well against teams that do not have great spacing. So Rudy himself is, a walking guy that's going to hold a team to, 100 or sub 100 points when they don't have a whole lot of spacing to go around. And then you add Jaden McDaniels into the mix. You add in what Anthony Edwards can do, moving his feet defensively, and then bringing Nikhil and Nas as defensive playmakers off the bench certainly makes an impact as well. So it was great to see Rudy make an impact and help, hold down a Pelicans team that certainly has a lot of firepower.
Yeah. When it's all clicking, man, it's been a lot of fun to watch this year. Again, just looking for consistency for sure. Couple minutes left. Let's talk about this Magic game Thursday night. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule gets packed with work projects and more, it's so easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, well, they're more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. You're getting 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Okay, any quick notes on, game 2 of DDV starting for Conley, a little bit bigger sample size, maybe the rest of Finch's rotations? If not, just give us your quick 2 or 3 bullet points on this Wolves versus Magic game Thursday night. 3 games and 4 nights for this Wolves team.
Yeah, it was nice to see Julius Randle get some more run tonight. I know that we've been tough on Randle, but he was really strong in the opening part of this game and did a great job of attacking Zion and testing him defensively early on in this game. And I thought for the most part, did a good job offensively of moving the ball and playing in transition, which was great for him. And I thought he was competitive on the defensive glass as well. Had 6 boards. Again, you'd like to see him take a little bit better care of the ball. Had some tough turnovers to watch there at 3 assists, 3 turnovers, but he was a plus 19 in his 35 minutes. It was a team high. And his physicality, I think, was really helpful against Zion. And I think the Timberwolves have struggled because they haven't had, obviously they used Kyle Anderson last year on guys like Zion, and Luka is a guy that could absorb some of that physicality, but being able to match, brute force with brute force a little bit more with Randle guarding Zion is certainly helpful. So you got to tip your cap and appreciate Randle for having a really strong night tonight. And again, 16 points on 11 shots. You'd probably like to see him get a little bit more involved in the offense, but in terms of his maybe number of post up looks or ability maybe to get out and run in transition and score some points on the break. But again, 16 points on 11 shots, you're never going to complain about efficiency like that. So it was a good night for Randle, and he handled most of the minutes in the lineup with Mike and Ant and Jaden and Gobert. The starters from last year with Naz was what we talked about last night as Chris Finch got to that lineup in all 4 quarters. But he went to Randle instead of Naz in those minutes tonight for the most part, just because Naz was struggling a little bit with his shots. And I think Naz might have had like 35 minutes last night and Randle had 23. And tonight that was exactly flipped. So Randle had 35, Naz had 23. So it was nice to see Randle bounce back on the second night of a back-to-back when he probably didn't expend all that much energy last night, playing a season low 23 minutes. So good to see that back. And then I think the other part of this too that is kind of been interesting with Randle, with Mike Conley sliding out of the starting lineup and Dante coming in, is that we haven't seen as much of that Dante, Josh Minot, Naz and Rudy, or Randle and Naz lineup, that we've seen quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. It's been a really, really strong lineup that Finch has gone to at the quarter 1 to quarter 2 turn and then quarter 3 to quarter 4 turn. And so it's been a little unfortunate that Josh Minot and Nikhil have seen their minutes go down a little bit as a result of the starting lineup change. And so Finchy has gotten to that lineup for a couple of minutes at the start of the second quarter the last couple of nights, but I would like to see him be able to work that a little bit differently so that we'd be able to get that lineup for a few more minutes. And I understand it's tough with wanting to get Mike in there and Dante starting and those guys kind of flipping their minutes. So it's tougher to get Dante on the back end as a bridge. So you probably have to start him in the second quarter where you've traditionally started Mike. So it's kind of what you're trading out for getting that Mike, Ant, Jaden, Naz, Rudy lineup, the starters from last year with Naz in for Cat, which has been really strong for the Wolves, and they've gotten to it. So those are just kind of some intricacies that I've been looking at over this rotation the last couple of nights. But as for the Magic, I think Jamal Mosley deserves a ton of credit. He's not going to win Coach of the Year because Kenny Atkinson's been amazing in Cleveland, having them sitting at like 30-5 or whatever they're at right now, which is amazing for a first-year head coach in a new environment. Obviously a really loaded Cleveland team, but what Jamal Mosley's gotten out of this Magic team, considering that I think Paolo.
They're what, like 22-16, something like that, like 7-8 games above 500. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. And the crazy part is Paolo Banchero, their star player, I think has only played like 5 games this season.
Wild.
Yeah. And so the fact that he's gotten so much out of this team compared, or when you consider that so many nights they've been undermanned in terms of the talent disparity between them and the other team and their compete factor and the way that they've just totally banded together and played really, really tough on the defensive end of the floor has been a total testament to what he's been able to do as a coach. They've been second in defensive rating so far this season. They are 26th in offense, but man, if they can make games like this a rock fight and they want it more than the other team, and they can effectively, clean the defensive glass, prevent teams from giving up offensive rebounds like they have this season. They're 5th in defensive rebounding percentage. That's a great key for the Magic. And they just play really, really hard. And the Timberwolves have to put together, an effort like they had last night, an effort like they had tonight again, much or something much closer to those two than what they put forth in that Detroit game, because even though they're the more talented team than Detroit totally wanted it more than the Wolves did, and really took it to them physically. So I think, again, it's a versatile defensive team between, Jalen Suggs, Wendell Carter, Jonathan Isaac, KCP, rookie Tristan Da Silva has been tremendous for them in playing meaningful minutes in his first year. But again, Magic are going to be down Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, probably down Jalen Suggs, who had a nasty fall on his back the other day in New York. And hey, they were down those three guys against the Knicks, and they still beat the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks didn't have Cat, but that's still a pretty substantial win for them to go take down the Knicks in MSG. So again, if Jalen Suggs is out, again, obviously out with Wagner and Banchero, they're really going to have to do a good job keying in on Cole Anthony and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And if they're able to take those two guys away, then the Timberwolves should certainly walk away on Thursday night with a win and fly home for what should be a very, very fun Saturday night home matchup, I believe, against the Memphis Grizzlies.
Memphis. Yeah, that should be a fantastic game for sure. Hopefully we can go into that game winners of 3 straight. Great stuff, man. Great breakdowns as always. Wolves win back-to-back on their back-to-back. Ant goes off for another 32 points tonight. Breaks 2 team records. Final versus the Pelicans, 104-97. 19-17 now on the year. 2 games above 500. As always, huge shout out to all the everydayers over here that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat and venting with us from game to game. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Go follow Jack, by the way, at Jared Borman 13. He's live from the Target Center almost every home game. Again, Magic, Thursday night, 6 p.m. tip-off. Catch you right here. Same time, same place. But until then, signing out.